Being an IANA member, we get to contribute to sharing best practices, to sharing information, developing ways of improving our processes and our communication. The collaborative nature of the industry, working with everybody, provides real benefit.
Hey, supply chainers, wherever you are in the world, this is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain.
Welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. Today we're not live with Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. You're live with me, Audrey Ross. So I'm tuning in here from Toronto. And a quick message first. What are your business supply chain challenges? Too much inventory on hand, too many disruptions and stockouts. Are there too many steps and touch points involved? Fastenal can tailor a solution from automated bins that monitor your inventory 24/7 to vending devices that help you track and control the products to keep your business running. Go to fastenal/ltsc.com to see how. Fastenal, where industry meets innovation. So I'll introduce myself just in case. I'm Audrey Ross. I said I'm here in Toronto. I'm the Import and Export Compliance Manager at Orchard Custom Beauty. We're an award-winning business-to-business private labeling company, and we specialize in beauty tools, bath accessories, and cosmetics. So we make the world a better place one lipstick at a time. So today we've got a great episode for you. We're doing a little bit of a recap of the Trans-Pacific Maritime and TPM Tech conferences that happened between February 24th, 23rd, and March 1st. It was quite the week in Long Beach, California. But first, we'll talk a little bit about what's happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got the episode of the week. We have episode 326, which is our Women in Supply Chain series. It's featuring Paige Way Cox, and that's a great episode that you're going to want to check out. This is, of course, Women's History Month. We have International Women's Day coming up tomorrow. So the women content is rolling out, and it's important to keep that going all through the year. The next event that we've got coming up is the Envase Envision. So that's March 8th to March 10th. And so that's a great conference that they're hosting and looking at sort of the future and current situation at hand. I'm going to bring up our guest for the week now. I'm really excited to have her join us today. Katerin van Ortegen, joining us in from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where it apparently has been snowing. So, Katerin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on today.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me, Audrey. I had the pleasure of meeting Audrey last week at TPM, and now 1 week later I'm with her online. Yeah. Gotta love this world, right? Yeah. So I'm originally Belgian, but I live in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, where our HQ is. I'm in the beautiful Good Shipping office. We did have snow, a lot of rain. I'm already missing the California weather, but oh well, Amsterdam is also quite nice.
Yeah, for sure. And tell us a little bit about Good Shipping and what your role is there. Because
sure.
I got to see you at TPM Long Beach. I got to see you on stage. The main stage, so talking. So I have a much better introduction of who you are. So let's let our viewers know.
Yeah, definitely. I had the pleasure to be on the first ever decarbonization panel. So we actually spoke with somebody like a carrier, a freight forwarder, a cargo owner, and then us. And I represent Good Shipping, which is a service provider. So we are a decarbonization service provider, which means that I help cargo owners and freight forwarders decarbon their emissions from transportation. So specific CO2 going down for transportation, logistics, all those really fun topics. I'm here to help to get emissions down. And internally, I do a lot of the commercial side of things, and I love to be a spokesperson. So I love to be on stage or online. I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. Yeah. And we had a great time at TPM. So let's talk a little bit about what happened. What was going on at TPM? What did you feel was sort of, everybody talked about the vibe. What was the vibe of the conference? What were some standout things? We're all kind of recapping right now. And I'd love to hear sort of from your perspective and maybe your team's, like what were the things that you were really noticing?
Yeah, it was. I thought it was sometimes a bit funny. Like last year, the carrier's attitude was a bit different than this year, right? Everybody was, last year was like all dark and all cost, cost, cost. And this year, the cargo owners were like, yay, costs are down. Come on, show me what's going to happen. So some people actually told me the tables have turned. So I felt like this whole dynamic shifts. Sustainability was spoken about last year, but not that much. This year on the main stage, plus some other panels as well. A panel where you were on too. Yep. It was really like there was a couple of days with topics. So I was very excited that it was more of a main issue now. And I think one of the things that stood out for me is that they also said it can be seen as a competitive advantage. So before it's more like, oh no, sustainability, sustainable freight, how am I going to do this? It's just going to cost me more. Yes, but I think the cost of not doing something has becoming more of a topic, and people are starting to see the other side of the medal, as they say. So I was very happy about that.
I agree. I thought it was great seeing it more integrated. It's almost like digital, where we're not having it like a separate tiny backroom conversation anymore. Like it's being integrated into the main piece of our business. And one of the things that I kind of noticed as well is the first thing that everyone talks about is cost. It's always cost. But on my panel, I kind of made the opinion, like I'm shipping already and it's not free.
True.
So I'm already paying money for something, but I'm paying for this. I now want to pay for that. So how do we get to that? And I know that there's been talk too that it's not individual. It's like me making a choice, sure, me making a complaint, maybe. But like it's collaborative. It's an industry-wide issue. And so to see everyone come together and sort of, starting to realize like it's going to take every layer, every piece, every part. There's a lot of investment that maybe hasn't been made, that was made into like some of the original fuel sources that we're using, the original mechanical and engineering investments that were made. And now we're just making new investments in new things because they're better. So that's what I like to see in the industry. Sometimes the industry gets really like, no, we're going to keep doing this. You're like, but it's not even good. Like, you don't even like doing it. Why are we doing it? Let's step into better. So
yeah. Exactly. I think one of the questions that was asked to ONE, which was then the carrier on my panel, they literally asked, okay, you made a lot of money last year. Where are you going to put your investment in? Like, what are you going to put your money in? And then they did make several claims about how they're investing in future fuels. And I think multiple carriers are making statements. And it's not just them, right? It's all of us working together. But I kind of love how the industry was being like, okay, you make good money, but where are you investing it in?
That was my point too, because last year they came out and one of the carriers, I won't drop names, but one of the carriers was like, yeah, we're going to add a decarbonization fee. And I'm like, I've just paid you a significant amount of money to move the same thing that last year I didn't pay you the same money. So you seem to have a little bit of float. But I have to pay like an additional surcharge on top of all the surcharges. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, we'll figure out I think an in-between balance thing, right? Where we all share the cost that plays that way.
Well, and I think now that shippers have been at like, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the new cost of things. But now that we've been in the like, oh, it's lower rates. If you give us that for like 6 months and then you introduce a decarb fee after like 6 months, we'll be like, oh, okay, sure, that's fine, because we're in this happy, like enjoyable phase of the business. So yeah. So what's happening in sort of, we usually do a bit of a market update. I sometimes talk about, congestion and things like that, but we're sort of early in the more peak season, and it sounds like a lot of people are sitting on inventory. Is there anything you're seeing in the market that's kind of standing out or that's of interest to you?
I think something I've definitely seen is when it came to sustainable freight, we used to talk to cargo owners mostly directly, because they were the ones that were asking for it and they didn't find any measurements. They were like, how do I measure my CO2 emissions? How do I reduce them? What can I actually do? Because they're like, I want to do something, but I don't know how. Yes. And I think end of last year and the beginning of this year, we've seen an immense increase in demand coming from freight forwarders. So actually, I think the cargo owners are asking so many questions to the freight forwarders. The freight forwarders are now coming to, for example, us, like, please help us with the decarbonization service, because my cargo owners are asking for it. So I love how that goes, right? Is they started it, the movement, let's say, and I feel like they're pushing it further down the line. And yeah, that's good. That's really good.
That's a good market shift, just to see it start going up and up and up. And I know broadly, the industry reports emissions, but I think what was great too about TPM is you have someone like a Kirsty SAE, who's now with like Zero, but you have you have these people who, the rest of us, it's like we see it, but we're not in it. And so we'll get something from the forward, or we see a number and we're like, oh, okay, that's a number, and we'll start tracking, or we can maybe put some sort of roadmap together based on these facts and figures. But then you find out like there's then the whole piece where like we're at this layer, but then when you get into the next layer, you realize, well, the data verification method is different. There's a lack of standardization in this industry. So I think it's so important. Because that's not necessarily qualitative data, and research is not necessarily my jam, but I think it's so important to the conversation that it's like, yes, we're getting started. And it's so important to get something started. Even Lars Jensen at his breakfast piece said, figure out a metric, start measuring it, because you're going to need to do that, and you need to start it now. And then it seems everything, we're working towards getting that more qualitative or better quality data and metrics, and do you see that? I'm sort of optimistic that that'll come through. Maybe other people are like, I don't know, but
yeah, no, I think so. I think I'm always more of the let's act now, right? I think people have waited for a very long time, so let's go. And even if it's not perfect, let's at least do something. But there are quite some bodies like Smart Freight Center who are now really helping with setting rules and guidelines and helping you how to do this internally. So I think there's a lot of movement coming, and IMO has new regulations, it's coming. So I think it's going to get a lot easier for us to have one framework that we can all work with and compare. But I would definitely just not wait, please. I think the Earth is asking us to act now.
Me and Aries, just get it done. Just start it. Someone has to finish it.
Exactly. And usually people don't decarbonize 100% from the start, right? They start with the beginning, with a pilot. So try it out, test it out, build up. I think the smaller customers we have, they do, for example, reduce 100% of their scope 3 emissions. The giant companies, they do more smaller bits. So that's okay. Let's all try it out. Let's talk. Let's be at conferences, share and inspire.
I love it. I think too, like when we started, and I presented this on my panel at Orchard at IBG, we started sort of like with what we were manufacturing, because we do a lot of manufacturing. So we started with manufacturing improvements. Then we're sort of in the facility stages. We're working on EcoVadis, which gives you like really clear steps. Like you have these tools, they give you very clear frameworks and steps to follow. And then now we're sort of turning to that, what they consider the scope 3 emissions and that piece of it. But it's like any sort of implementation plan. You do it in baby steps, you get started, and off we go. So I love it.
I agree.
So let's have a look because it's so fast here. Let's have a look at our articles. So we're going to start with, we have an article here about robotics, which is definitely, Sarah's a big fan of robotics, especially the warehouse ones, the dancing ones. But today we're going to look at supply chain robotics article, and it's about how big the buy is. Like they are just getting these massive orders. A $12 billion in orders on AI-enabled robot technology for supply chain. What are your thoughts on robots?
Yeah, it's funny that I get to give my thoughts on robots because it's not really my area of expertise. But I think in general, these kind of robotics and automation, I think it's a good thing. I really hope it's a good thing. I know some people might lose their jobs, but I hope they get more interesting jobs, and that kind of the super repetitive things can be taken over by these robots. It's a hard one. I think it's definitely a growing business. If you look at this article, my God, all these numbers, I was a bit flabbergasted by the amount of the orders in the millions. And I think it's big business.
Yeah, and I think it really seems to have taken off too. And I echo your point, and that's something I talk about quite a bit on Thoughts and Coffee. I'm a bit of a labor person. So again, it's that, making sure when we are bringing in these advanced and interesting AI systems, that we're recognizing that doesn't mean it's like we're getting this so we get rid of all of these people. It's how are we sort of folding them into our workspace, you know, and making the jobs, like you say, making it more interesting, making it better. TPM Tech really talked quite a bit about that. There were so many conversations around robots, AI, you know, like, there's this camp that's like AI is going to take your job. You have another camp like AI is going to make your job better. You know, you have another camp that like, is AI even real? Is it even happening? So it's like a whole, you just look at this industry, it has the whole spectrum of what's happening in this business. But I think for, you know, when we're looking at, you know, challenging supply chain situations, you know, improving any sort of even decarbonization, improving our decarbonization by just making our functions more efficient, and then leaving someone, like, instead of, you know, me sort of doing like extra rekeying, or someone in a warehouse kind of dealing with something that, you know, could be mechanically done, then we have the time and the bandwidth to really think about, like, how can we make this better? How can we decarbonize? How can we improve? So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that was not, those numbers were nuts. I mean, those are big numbers. Hopefully we can see those investments in decarb, those kinds of numbers.
That would be great.
That'd be a good one. So our next article we'll talk about is a bit of a recap on TPM as well, because it's a hot, you know, it's a pretty big conference, and it sounds like it was the biggest one this year. So we had a lot of attendees, a lot of excitement. As you said, like, the mood was very different. You know, I think last year there was like a rumor, it's like they needed to get security guards because, you know, they were so worried about the tension in the industry.
Really?
And this year, and this year was like much like, I was having you know, you're having cappuccinos on the outside, you're going in, everybody's like, hey, oh, you know, so I thought it was a lot different. So this article is the shipping execs, I guess we're executives, gathers the global supply chain hits calmer waters. Which calmer waters is interesting because you're like, the prices have gone down, but the blank shippings have not. And so this article from Laura Curtis delves into, you know, gives a little bit of a recap about the convention. She was there attending TPM. And so it looks at, you know, it was looking at kind of what everyone thought the key points would be, right? How are the negotiations for contracts going to go? You know, are we going to see the global goods slump? Because, you know, there's this talk of inventory. Everybody has this full inventory right now. And so what does that look like for the volumes that are going to be shipping? How low are these rates going to go? And what are the next big disruptors? So she had kind of listed things like the labor unrest. You know, we've seen over 2022, we saw a lot of strike actions. You know, from the West Coast side, they have their ILWU union is still in negotiations. I mean, those started May 1st last year. We have, you know, this accelerated reshoring. So all of us, I think, are making, if you're a shipper, you're making decisions on, okay, where am I making this? If my customer is in Amsterdam, am I going to make it maybe in Poland? Am I going to look at Turkey? Am I looking more European based? If you're in North America, are you looking to, you know, North American manufacturers, or are we still doing sort of a lot of, you know, really large geographic movements? So what did you think about this one? Any highlights for you?
I think one that was interesting for me, but wasn't really listed in there, were also the global differences somehow, because I, of course, came with the EU angle trying to feel out the US market. And things I definitely saw was that when it came to sustainability, a lot of people referenced the EU as being the front runner, the US as being behind. Their words, not mine. But what I also thought and learned is that they think that the US is going to accelerate faster because Europe made huge steps over the past 5 years. But some industry experts are now thinking that the US, took a longer time, but when they're going to go faster.
They'll just go.
So I'm kind of curious to see if they're going to build up on that. And what I definitely also saw was the feeling of a shared responsibility. There is still a little bit of, you, like pointing fingers, but I also felt a lot more like going hand in hand. Okay, I take a bit, you take a bit, let's do it together. Let's really make this industry also a bit, faster, more edgier. And also that feeling a little bit like, okay, this is still an old industry, but it's changing. And then maybe last but not least, I saw a large number of women on the floor and on stage. You as well. So it was also a very nice shift to see in the industry, at least on the floor of the TPM. So
I think this industry, it does get this reputation. It does get a reputation for being male dominated. It does have a reputation for things being sort of traditional. That's how we've always done it. It's a very old industry. I think people do forget, shipping and trade is, hundreds, centuries, years old. So, yeah, we got accustomed to our Excel spreadsheets and we maybe have hung on to them for too long. However, we are seeing, we're also like, people are cautious because, so one of the things that I've always maintained is I have to implement change while running a supply chain. My supply chain is not going to stop. I have you get a little bit of a lull, but that is not, enough to have a full stop. So I have to maintain, and everyone has to maintain this business while making these changes sort of on top or, dropping them into the routine or into the process. And that can be a real challenge for people. So of course we're sort of very cautious because, we're the spend, especially last year, it was like, oh, you spend all the money and you're like, right, but it was for a good reason. I think, we got our stuff. So, but that sort of tradition or conservatism that we kind of see can create some hurdles. But then now that we're presented with so many more options and we're seeing less, I feel like we're seeing less combative or less, there's competition, but I don't find that it's, the same kind of adversarial or, everyone is starting to realize like they can do their special thing that they do really well, and do it alongside someone else. And I saw so many more sort of partnership conversations like, oh, we work with this other technology company. We work with these people. And you're like, oh, I thought you'd kind of do your own thing. Did you find that too on sort of that kind of partnership piece where you were like, oh, all 5 of you work together? That's, okay.
Yeah, I think a bit more. I for example, with ports, because we did a whole collaboration with the port of Rotterdam, but then the port of Antwerp found me because they found out I'm Belgian. Super nice. But then also the port of LA even texted me before I got a chance to talk to them. And they were like, okay, ports also want to be part of the sustainability journey. We're investing a lot already in equipment, but what else can we do? What else can we offer? So I was like, I'm so happy about all this interest of this port element is now new, right? So it's really cool to see all the different elements work together a lot more than against each other.
Yeah. I mean, they've become so much more visible, right? Because before, I don't think my team, it's like stuff just came, it just arrived. And then now it's like, oh yeah, it goes from here, this port to this port, and then this happens. So there's that more visibility piece as well.
That's for sure. I think that's been such a learning curve for all of us, especially people outside of the industry. With everything that happened last year, it's become way more visible. It's funny. Like before, people like, what do you even do? And now they're like, oh, I saw that thing on the news, or I saw that container. Like they're starting to link it all together, which is kind of cool.
I do that for my team. I do a visual, and I have like a little factory, and then I have a little truck, and then I have a port with a crane, and then I have the waves. And then I have another port with a crane, and then I have because sometimes you need to see that visual of what happens, because I think we were lucky we've been in Long Beach where you see the cranes, you see the vessels, like it's very visible. I think for people in Rotterdam, I think in Vancouver, in Prince Rupert, like you see it, right? So it's more part of your day to day. And then there's the rest of us, like I'm sitting in Toronto just on a computer and I'm like, what's a container? Oh, that's right. I moved those. So that piece, that visibility, I think has really helped. And having, just having these collaborative conversations. Another thing I just want to mention is, like seeing the amount of women around the conference was great, because I'm sure you've experienced it, but a lot of us walk into, you attend a conference, you attend a seminar, you attend a meeting, and it's just simply, you're either the only or you're one of the handful that are there. And so it was really nice to see that is shifting. And I think, conference organizers are doing a bit more work as well on that representation piece and being a bit more mindful about the layout of their panels. Have you found that, at this, but at any other events, are you seeing that?
Yeah, slow but steady. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And there's still little things too, where it is, there's still the culture of certain, conferences, is sort of shifting. Sometimes they have, a bit more of a celebratory atmosphere that it's not exactly fits with, some of our culture, some of our personality. So
I think sometimes they're, for example, like a bit like, oh, you're going to be on stage. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm young and a woman, but I can do it. But
I know my stuff. So no one better than me to go up there. So yeah, it's true. It's good to see that shift. So let's walk into the last article we have today, because of course this show goes so fast. We're talking about 4-day work weeks, which again, I feel like the European, I feel like that perspective is sort of leading it. We get this sort of, I'm not sure if it was Iceland or Norway that kind of had started that, like, let's try this. Let's do, let's test this out. So this article covers, it's a study. It found 4-day work week works because of course it does. I had read something, I can't remember who it was. And it was like, you fill your time. So if you have 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, your brain, even if you're not consciously, maybe unconsciously, your brain will like stretch that time. Whereas if you have a doctor's appointment or some sort of thing where you're sort of like, oh, I'm only going to be here until this time, like somehow you hustle and get it all done. Yeah. So this article kind of dives into that, like that people love a 4-day work week. I mean, we love the sound of it. It always sounds good. But the study included almost 3,000 employees. They did it in the UK across 61 different organizations, various types and sizes last year. And 92% of those studied decided to continue with it. So it sounds like they did it as a trial, like a pilot. And so, and then now it's continuing. What do you think about this? Do you want to do 4 days?
I love it. I'm all in. I might have to send this to my boss after this show, right? Be like, have a look. No, I love it. Yeah. I love that they said as well, like that 90%, like that they want to continue. And I love the 15% claiming no amount of money would motivate them to go back. I think that's such a strong statement. Yeah. But personally, I like your comment too. I think, me personally, if I only have 4 days, I'm just more efficient. I just know I have a limited amount of time. This is what I want to get done. I might prioritize better because maybe right now I'm spending hours on things that I actually shouldn't be spending time on. And if you have less, you might make more strategic decisions. So no, I love it. And I like somebody's comment as well. I just do all the housework on Friday and then you have your weekend. Indeed, like we all need to do things we have to do, right? But if we could put them on the Friday, for example, then no, I'd love it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. And it could be, it's that piece of like, what do we, and I would say like, I love my job. It sounds like you love your work. Like we have purposeful, interesting work. And at the same time, I would like to do it in 4 days. As much as it's like, people are like, but I love my job. And I'm like, I love my job too. But I also think we can, like you said, it's be more effective. It's lining things up a bit differently. It's prioritizing. And I think that might give you the push too, to do a lot more audit. Like we'll get the robots in so that we can do like, or the AI or the chat GPT, whatever, so that I don't have to like rekey things because I'm prioritizing and being strategic. So I like that piece of it as well.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. So looks like I forgot we were going to look at the poll. Let's Talk Supply Chain does a poll every week. So we'll go and do that before we end the show. So that poll was, thanks, Nicole. So that was, which job would you rather take? Which is, we're talking about the shorter workday. So the poll was about one with better pay, one offering a better experience, and then other, which I think is so relevant. Like even in this study, like you highlighted, it's not always about the money. Money's helpful. We want to get paid, but it's not always about the money. What did you think?
True. I really like the other as well because I had to look at the comments, then what other people wrote. And I saw one that I thought was cool, which was from Leah Clement. And she said a job that allows creativity. And I like that because a lot of the other ones were work-life balance, stability, benefits, what I would have like thought that would happen, right? But the allows creativity, I think, is such a good one because again, this efficiency is really good, right? But how much room is there still to really change the way we're working, change the way we're thinking, really inspire others? So that was something that stood out to me. But
I love that. I love that because it is. It's what you're allowed to do in the framework of your job. But one of the things I like is the autonomy. I have a lot of, I don't have to do I can shift around. There's little things I don't like to do, and I can shift those around. There's a lot of things I love doing, and I sort of have that independence to be able to kind of make that routine happen and just make my priorities happen. So that's something I like about my job. So
nice,
interesting. Yeah, so that was a fun poll, and so they do a poll every week. So if you're following along, Let's Talk Supply Chain, which I hope you are, they can do the poll. Sometimes they're really They're not just supply chain related or work related. Sometimes they're sort of point of interest, which just kind of lightens up the week. Like, I don't think we want to take our work so seriously, do we?
No, we need some lightness as well. Like that keeps us going.
Yeah. Oh, and CM says growth and location. Growth is so important too, like in how you're learning and your sort of path to kind of personal development. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Katerin, all the way from Amsterdam. And it was such a pleasure to meet you at the conference, you and Shana. So we're going to keep in touch after this for sure. Everyone else, if you're looking for more information, obviously you can go to Good Shipping. It's right up here. So you can all see it. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll be hosting again next week. Sarah's still on her sort of travel adventures. So watch for me and a special guest next week. And otherwise, make a great week and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks.